Welcome to another episode of STEM Lyceums. I'm so glad you all could join us. I see some familiar names, quite a number of our mentees from the mentorship program. Love to see that. And a good number of our return customers. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. This is a great one to kind of dip your toe into STEM Lyceums. I hope you enjoy the programming tonight. We're going to give everybody just a couple of minutes to get situated here. I know it takes a little bit of lag to get together on this. I appreciate all you joining us tonight, especially those of you that are in college application mode right now. I know your brains are on one gear, so the fact that you have interests in some other things that you're ready to jump in on is awesome. You know, we're all about enrichment and innovation here. All right. I think we have enough people in at this moment that we can go ahead and get started. If anybody else jumps in, we can always answer their questions at a later time. So thank you, everybody. Welcome to Invention, Innovation, and Patents. I'm so excited to, host this episode with you all today. I've been planning this one for quite some time, so I'm really excited that we were able to put it together. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do an overview of our programs, and then I'll introduce our speakers. So first of all, CEE was founded in 1983 by Joanne DeGennaro and the late Admiral H.G. Rickover, who is the father of the nuclear navy and civilian uses for nuclear power. Our mission here at CEE is to nurture high school and university scholars to careers of excellence and leadership in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM, and to encourage international collaboration between and among leaders in the global community, which you all are. Here at CEE, we have four flagship programs, the first of which is RSI, the Research Science Institute. RSI is a highly competitive 6-week summer science and engineering program open to rising high school seniors. Juniors are eligible to apply. RSI is the first cost-free summer science and engineering program that combines on-campus coursework in scientific theory with off-campus work in science and technology research. Applications for RSI are currently open on the RSI website. The applications will close on December 10th. Okay, so if you have additional questions about RSI specifically, please email me or email the program manager for RSI, Maite Ballestero. Um, just because I don't want to answer those questions particularly during this webinar. So email me if you have any questions. Next, we have USA Biolympiad, the premier U.S. biology education and testing program for high school students. It provides the motivation, curricular resources, and skills training to take students beyond their classroom experience to a level of international competitiveness. Since CEE began administering the USABO in 2003, every member of the USA Biolympiad team has medaled at the IBO. This coming year in 2026, the finals for IBO will be held in Lithuania, I believe. So very exciting. Applications for USABO close on November 8th. If your school is not a host school for USABO, you will need to talk to a teacher in order to get registered as a host school first before you can take the entry exam for USABO. Again, if you have any questions about that, please email me or email Kathy Frame, the program manager for USABO. Next, we have the Teacher Enrichment Program, or TEP. TEP provides opportunities for middle and high school teachers to connect with leading experts from industry and academia, explore cutting-edge research and development, and make meaningful professional links with direct benefits for teachers and students. Finally, we have us, STEM Lyceums, a virtual club for high school students to meet once a month or twice a month to learn about STEM career pathways from leading field experts. Industry professionals share cutting-edge research and offer unique learning experiences like scholarships, internship opportunities for high achievers. So, welcome. I'm so glad you can join us. Our panel, I'm so excited to introduce them to you all. So, we'll start first with Tom Jenkins. Tom Jenkins is a nationally recognized educator with nearly 30 years of experience empowering young minds through science, technology, and innovation. For 25 years, he taught 8th grade science, computer science, and STEM at Greenon Junior Senior High School in Enon, Ohio, where he inspired students to embrace curiosity, creativity, and problem solving. He began his teaching journey in Springfield City Schools, laying the foundation for a career defined by excellence and impact. Tom's dedication to STEM education has earned him numerous prestigious honors, including induction into the National Teachers Hall of Fame, recognition as Ohio State Teacher of the Year, District 10 and state finalist, and awards such as the Air Force Association Ohio Teacher of the Year, Lemelson MIT Excite Award, and the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. In 2022-2023, Tom served as an Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellow, lending his expertise to the Department of Defense STEM initiatives as the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Candarroch Division. Today, he continues to shape national STEM efforts through his work with InventEd, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and DoD STEM, serving as an NSTA DoD STEM ambassador. Tom also played a key role in guiding the Education Division at the National Museum of the United States Air Force and currently leads regional workforce development as Director of Career Connected Learning and Workforce at the Montgomery County Educational Service Center. In this role, he champions career awareness and access to internships, apprenticeships, and post-secondary opportunities for youth across Southwest Ohio. A national board certified teacher, Tom holds a master's in science and teaching and a bachelor's of arts in elementary education from Wright State University, along with a secondary engineering certification from the University of Cincinnati. Joining our panel today also, we have Darren Lau. Darren Lau is a senior at the Academy of the Lakes in Land O'Lakes, Florida, whose research lies in deep learning and augmented reality. He is also the inventor of two patent-pending medical AR systems to aid colorblind patients and help neurosurgeons conduct safer surgeries. Competing at the Invention Convention U.S. Nationals, he placed first in his grade category and won the RTX Special Award for Connectivity and has achieved additional recognition, being named the Florida Inventors Hall of Fame Top Innovator. Darren also teaches students how to create inventions through his organization, the Academia and Research Collective, and he is the team captain of the FRC team, the Yellow Haze. Thank you both for joining us today. I'm so excited for you to share your expertise with our students, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the floor over to Tom to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I think, one of the things that I will say is that just participating and keeping yourself open to new possibilities and always being curious is the first step to like patent and innovation journey. Because, one of the things that I can say is that, I'm just a classroom teacher, but because I've always been open to all different types of professional development, I've been able to live in DC and work for the Department of Defense for a year. I've gone on 2 NASA missions at high altitude. I've done deep sea research for 18 days in the North Atlantic. So all of those things have, I've been able to engage my natural curiosity and I've been able to grow and I've been able to learn so much from others that it's really helped me put me in a position where I can have been extremely successful and been able to do a lot of things. And, and honestly, like if you're here doing this now, like I really didn't get active on this stuff until after I graduated college. So you already have a big head start on me. So I applaud you all for being here, for being curious. And one thing I'll say as I go through this, if you have any questions or whatever, please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll do my best to get back to you. And as Rebecca said, at the end of the chat, if we don't get to all your questions, we'll make sure that we are available to answer questions via email later on. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And one of the things that you'll see as we go through this is I'm going to cite specific examples and I'm going to kind of give an overview of innovation and invention, and then the patent that I hold along with 14 of my students. So, when we talk about innovation, like it's important that we understand why innovation exists and how it's a pathway to pretty much anything that you want to do in your life. We're born as innovators. So like one thing I hear is like, I'm not an inventor. Well, we're all inventors because if you think about from the time you learned to walk or the time you learned how to manipulate a system when you're little, like all of these things helped make you who you are. So we're natural inventors. I think one thing that's unfortunate is a lot of times the way we are taught kind of beats that inventiveness out of us. We're afraid to take risks. And that's a huge thing. It's like, there's positive risks that you can take throughout your life where you're going to learn regardless. And a lot of people get stuck on being afraid to fail. And my advice to all of you guys is we fail all the time. It's just being cognizant of that you failed and learning, reflecting why you failed. Those are huge drivers on to help you be successful and do better with the next iteration. So as we're going through today, one of the things I want you to think about and put on your inventor mindset is what problem in your daily life could use a creative solution. Because as you work on these, then you'll understand that inventing is part of who we are. And to lean on Benjamin Franklin, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Excellent book, even a decent movie. But again, you get into the point where you have a young man in Africa, Malawi, I believe, and his community was dependent on irrigation, and it took electricity to drive the pumps. So what he was able to do is William was able to go through and create something for his community. And he was able to do it out of upcycled materials from a junkyard or from a bicycle. So something that you need to think about is a lot of people, again, tend to think that these are just like old dudes in lab coats that look like Thomas Edison that are creating things. Inventors are those people, but inventing happens in our communities every single day. All right. And sometimes the inventions don't even have to be complex. Oftentimes they are, but sometimes they can just be a very thoughtful solution to a problem. All right. And one of the things that I encourage, and I've always gone through with my classes, and I've spent a lifetime teaching grades 5 through 8 and also working with high school students, is think about problems that you have in your day. Think about problems that your family has. Think about problems that the community has. Like global issues are great, but if you can start by working on things in your community, then it's amazing how much impact and how much support you can get from your community. With inventions that we created in my small rural community in Ohio, literally in the middle of the cornfield, we had very little budget, but we were able to go through and we were able to reach out to a lot of people. And when they found out we were doing something that was going to improve the quality of our community, and that we had 14 students and that we had 5 teachers that were working after school just because we wanted to geek out together and we wanted to improve one aspect of our community, it was amazing the outpouring of support that we had. Right? Not only did we have nonprofits, not only did we have higher education, not only did we have local industry as well as international industry, but we also ended up receiving support from the state of Ohio as well as Microsoft in California. And we'll talk more about that later. But when it comes to innovation and thinking about how you're going to go through and even get started on the problem, you need to identify the problem. Then you need to research things. And it's very helpful. It's okay to stand on the backs of geniuses as long as you make it your own. And a lot of inventions are amalgamations of other ideas. They just don't suit a certain circumstance. Right. So a lot of times things just need to be adapted to fit the wants or needs of the consumer. All right. Brainstorm creative alternatives. So it's always helpful while you can invent on your own. I would suggest it's definitely easier to invent with others, because anytime you can have diversity in thought, then that really helps things go. All right. And when you have those diversity of thoughts and expertise and you can like blend them together, then it creates this wonderfully collaborative thing that's bound to be novel, which is going to be a big word, a big important thing. We'll come back later. Create prototypes and test your ideas. You're not going to get this right the first time. If you do, great. But most of us go through multiple iterations of refining a product, because even when a product's done, that product is never going to withstand the test of time. There's always going to be something better that you can always upgrade this product in some way. So don't be afraid, to get in there and test. And you're not going to be able to test at scale a lot of times because you're not going to have the materials or be able to fabricate larger things oftentimes with what you have laying around. So it always helps with like small scale models that you can go through and test things, because your final solution is almost always going to need to be more robust than what you come up with. Then refine your design based on feedback. Again, I talk about the consumers or the customers. The end users are the ones that are going to drive this process because you can invent the best thing ever. But if you don't invent it and there's not a market there, or there's like not people that are interested in, then that's great for the purpose of inventing, but who's going to utilize this product? So kind of keep that in mind. And then if you get to the point where you have a novel idea and it can have a huge impact, then protect your invention with patents. Okay. And there's a few different types of patents, which we'll talk about, but it's very important that you go through the step to protect your intellectual property. Now, what you want to do or how much money you want to make, that's fine. Like some people may think, I just want to invent this just because, and then give it away. Well, that's okay, but still secure your intellectual property because you don't know what other people are going to do with it. So if you go through the patent process, then you can go through and protect your intellectual property, which gives you the power to then do whatever you want with that. All right. So student inventors, they're more prolific than you think. And a lot of times, as I mentioned, we don't have to have student inventors don't have to be like adults. All right. They don't have to be high school students. Student inventors can also be little kids because, as I said, we invent all the time. So kind of be thoughtful of this as you're going through the process. And here's just some examples. Now, when we talk about my students, if you want to read more about my students and my students' journey, we went through and we live in Cornfield, Ohio, small town, 2,000 people. So we have a mix of rural and suburban in our district. And one of the big problems we have is being in Ohio, we're at the edge of glaciation. So you have a lot of waterways that go through our community. And one of the things that really bothered my students was the amount of debris that would go through. And we were primarily thinking like McDonald's cups or whatever that get washed down the sewer and then get out the outfall pipe. And if you look at the picture in the background, think of like Simpsons, that's the outfall pipe where just raw sewage would get down down the storm drains and they would come out there. So we had a lot of debris. So we went through and first we looked for products that existed. We had our idea. We talked to our consumers, which was Ohio Department of Transportation. And one of the things that we learned is that in our area, not only was trash a huge problem, but we also learned that corn stalks were a huge thing that clogged up our sewerways and our local waterways. And it was detrimental not only to our environment on multitude of levels. So one of the things that we went through is we talked to the consumers. We talked about what the needs were. We talked about what our possibilities were as we can go through and start refining a product. And then what we invented is we invented a system to remove debris. So if you look at the thing on the left, that's the outfall pipe. Then we had two circles that were made out of aluminum steel alloy that would have a net on the end of it. And when that net got filled with trash as the water would go through it, then what would happen is that would increase the amount of drag. And as the drag on this giant net, think of a mesh sock, when it would get pulled, then it would pull a little tension sensor that was between the metal rings, and then it would go back to our Arduino, which would then broadcast the song Africa, which is what my students chose to put in as the indicator, to a receiver, which would then play the song Africa, and I would know that the net was full. So this solution was meant to help make sure that debris was out of local waterways in rural or suburban areas that couldn't be accessed. So for our award, we went through and we were issued a patent, and we got all kinds of acknowledgement, including from the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. And again, this was a huge win for our community. And one of the things that was very novel and something I encourage you to check out is we are really modest and we are a Title I school, so we don't have a lot of money. So when they asked, are you going to get a patent for this? We're like, no, it's just not in the cards for us. But fortunately, there's a program that you may want to write down. It's called Microsoft #MakeWhat'sNext. And of the 14 high school students that volunteered for this project, 12 just happened to be female. And because we had so many female students, Microsoft #MakeWhat'sNext is a pro bono program for female inventors. So Microsoft actually helped us through the patent process. So that was kind of crazy and kind of wonderful and unexpected. and it was really cool. And something that Darren's going to have to deal with is the question is, I was asked, how do I put my patent on my college application? And it's a pretty sweet question to ask. And again, we didn't get into this for to earn a patent. It just kind of happened, but it was a wonderfully and well-deserved afterthought, and something that the students earned, and that's something I'm so happy to help them figure that problem out. So where do you get started, or what resources do you have? All right, I strongly encourage you. Invent Ed is a wonderful place with tons of resources for inventors. And this includes not only students, but also adults on how you get started and how you get linked into a network that I help with. And it's a wonderful endeavor. It's a nonprofit. Another thing that I encourage you to explore is Lemelson MIT Invent Teams. Our team couldn't have done this without a grant. So we were able to get $10,000 for our project. And I see Invent Team now grant is $7,500. But this helps you with all the materials and all the things that you need to produce, because not everybody comes from a rich enough school to do this. So check out Invent Teams if you're interested in becoming a middle school or a high school or inventor and working with a program that's going to help fund you. All right. Next step is a future inventor, other things, and I'm sure Darren will talk about this a lot. Join or start an invention club at your school. All right. Robotics, science fairs, maker spaces. Take STEM courses that interest you. Science is another wonderful thing to help gauge interest and aptitude, and start documenting your ideas in an inventor's notebook. Inventor's notebooks are so critical just to kind of keep track of wins, losses, or random thoughts. And the cool thing about having an inventor's notebook is it's this documentation. So if you can prove when your ideas were there and the dates you had them, that really helps you on down the road if you are going to have IP issues. So any documentations that you can have, and then connect with mentors. There's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of adults that have been through this process that love the idea that you guys are on this call on a Wednesday night and that you guys are thinking about invention education, and we're here to help you. And there's so many people like me that volunteer their time to be supportive, because we just want you to be successful. And we encourage this kind of thought process because it's a wonderful opportunity to grow and just to have an impact on humanity. So developing an inventive mindset. What if and why not? These are things that you really need to focus on. Don't assume that you can't do it, because you can really, there's so many tools out there, especially like modeling and simulation stuff, that really helps you get started in a cheap, efficient way. Learn from failures. Again, we all mess up. We mess up a bunch. So when adults, or if anybody pretends that they're smart enough that they don't mess up, then they're full of it. Go through, figure it out, mess up, but learn from it. And collaborate, stay curious, just kind of things I've been talking about. And remember, as you're going through the patent process, that a patent gives inventors exclusive rights for their invention for 20 years. All right. So you can go through, and I can have exclusive rights to my patent, so no one else can go through and make like a knockoff. And, it's kind of one of those things. It protects me, and it helps, go through and ensure that I have time to develop a product if I choose to sell it. Now, one of the things I will say is, even though we got a patent, my team, we all own equal rights, and we all decided that any proceeds we ever receive from our patent will go back to our school district. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's what our choice was. Understand also, you can go to a utility patent, a design patent, or a plant patent. And again, for patent requirements, there's a lot of things, but your invention must be new. You'll hear the word novel a lot, useful, and non-obvious. The patent application also includes detailed drawings and explanation of how your invention works. We have a lot of patent art, so make sure that you have an understanding of how the art works. So a rough understanding of how the patent process works. And again, there's more steps than this, but this is just kind of just the quick at it. You do a preliminary patent search, you see what's out there. And a cool thing is, as you go through and after you get a patent, you can see other people that will actually go through and find your patent through a patent search, or they'll cite your patent on their application. So that's really cool too, just kind of validates things. You file a patent application, there's an examination of the patent application, then there's office actions. So we have claims, which were things that made our novel, but we had a lot of different claims that made our things unique. And the patent office pushed back a couple of them. So as the patent applicant, we could have challenged those legally, or we could have just dropped them. And the cool thing is we had plenty of novel things to our patent. So if we just had two things that we could give up, The other 8 things were novel, so that was still enough to get us a patent. So we didn't have to worry about that. So be prepared. This process is a long time because then you respond, then you wait again, and then you get the patent grant. So it's a pretty amazing process, but it's also long, and it's nerve-wracking. If you're interested in learning more about the patent, like a patent process, then please go use this resource. It's called the Inventor's Patent Academy. It's funded by Qualcomm. So many of you guys know this. And this is a free way for which you can go through and you can basically take a free online course that helps you learn more about patents and intellectual property. So I strongly encourage TIPA. And then again, when you go through, don't forget that all this is career connected learning. Regardless if you get a patent or not, or you're just messing around with invention education, there's a lot of different career pathways this leads to. And again, all of these skills, not only are you applying everything that you learn in math, science, engineering, but you're also fine-tuning those science and engineering practices that will help you be so successful in life. And hopefully, they're also building your network. So my advice to you is if you have an idea, go for it. And I'm sure it's great that Darren's going to be following up because he's in this process and he's going to be able to share from his perspective where his journey's taken him.
Thank you so much for sharing all that awesome, real world examples of what students can be doing with their ideas, growing them from the ground up. All right, we're going to go ahead and pass it on over to Darren to bring it full circle.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna be continuing on from where Tom left off, but except I'm gonna give the student side of things and how you can actually become an inventor and the things that you can join, extracurriculars, summer programs, and a bit about the invention process on the student side, and also how to compete and win at science fairs, which is my personal favorite thing. So yeah, Ms. Carter already talked about this. I'm from Tampa, Florida. I'm a high school senior at Academy at the Lakes. I've been an inventor since 8th grade of my very first research and science fair project. And last year, I was the first place winner in the 11th grade division at the RTX Invention Convention. And so I want to first quickly talk about what my invention was for last year that I competed at the RTX because it kind of sets the stage for the rest of the presentation. Last year, I had an invention that basically helped neurosurgeons conduct brain tumor surgery. What happens is that during brain tumor surgery, the brain will actually move and shift around. This is known as brain shift due to things such as gravity and fluid loss. But what happens is that MRI scans are no longer accurate because of these shifts. And so what I made was that I first made an AI algorithm that is able to predict the movements of these brain tumors live during a surgery. And the little diagram on the bottom is basically my AI algorithm broken up into steps. It's not really that important how it works, but mainly is that we are able to take MRI and ultrasound scans and be able to predict the live location of brain tumors throughout the entirety of the brain surgery. And then what we do is that we cast it to a pair of augmented reality glasses. And so surgeons can get a live view of the brain tumor throughout the entire surgery and so that they know exactly where it is. Because what happens is that if the brain tumor is moving around, surgeons don't know where it is, and then they end up damaging brain tissue and blood vessels. And that's really, really bad. And the reason I came up with this project was because a very close friend of mine went through a brain tumor surgery and they ended up having this issue happen to them. Now they're okay, but that was the inspiration for this project. And so that's just a little bit about my invention. Now, the first thing I always, whenever I talk about invention is like, why should we invent? Well, the reason is that you've identified a problem. Whether it's, community or personal, for me, it was personal because a close friend of mine had an issue. That's why you want to invent. But also, invention is also an application of research and learning. When you're going through the invention process, like Tom talked about, you're going to be learning so many different things throughout this process. And that's an application of research. But also, when you're inventing a thing itself, you're going to learn so many things that you didn't even know that you were going to learn. And it just happens. It's inevitable. You cannot predict it, but it's an inevitable part of the process. Another thing is you want to help the world around you. For me, I love inventing biomedical solutions so that patients can have easier times just as people. And so one of my first inventions was another augmented reality system, except this one helped colorblind people. And so I myself am colorblind, and so that's where I got that invention from. But I was able to help a few people who had never been able to see some colors before actually see more accurate colors, which I thought was super cool. And lastly, is you get to contribute to new knowledge. When you file a patent, you're putting out new knowledge into the world. And what's cooler than like literally creating new knowledge? There's nothing cooler than that. Now, How can you get started? First thing is you have to be curious. You have to be curious about everything. It's not just about STEM. You have to always have a mind that's always asking questions. And when you ask these questions, you'll also find problems, right? Observe problems around you, ask questions, and then imagine solutions. But while you're imagining these solutions, one thing I want to emphasize is that you will go through so much trial and error. I think Tom can attest to this. He probably went through probably like millions of prototypes, and I myself did as well. This is trial and error is like the motto of inventing. If you don't go through trial and error, I do not consider you to be an inventor because you have to go through so many iterations. Even if you think the first thing you've created is perfect, I can guarantee you it is far from perfect. You have to go trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. Now, I want to talk about extracurriculars that you can actually be a part of. Tom mentioned this. He predicted me perfectly. Research clubs. Join a research club at your school. You get to learn so much about the research process. Usually you're given a project, and then with that project, you're able to just, learn all about it, or to teach, or someone is teaching you the skills of research. Or if you don't have a research club at your school, start a research club. There is such an interconnected community of research clubs all around the country. You start a research club, you'll automatically join that network of innovators. And, as a person that's applying to college, being able to put that you started a research club is a pretty good thing. Another thing, and my personal favorite, is science and STEM fairs. This is like my bread and butter, competing at these science and STEM fairs. I'm pretty sure that almost every region and definitely every state has like a regional or state science fair that is open to most people to apply to. And so if you have an invention, do apply to it. Another competition is also known as the Thermo Fisher Scientific Junior Innovators Challenge. This one I think is only open to middle schoolers. I did this one back when I was in 8th grade. Back then, though, it was called Broadcom Masters. So it was a very long time ago, but now it's called Thermo Fisher Junior Innovators. So that's a great one. And lastly is ICEF and Regeneron STS. ICEF is only open to high schoolers. And the Regeneron STS is only open to seniors, but these two are two of the most prestigious science fairs. And when I talk about these competitions, go and compete at them. Winning is not the point, because when you get to compete, you meet so many people that are similar minded to you. And you also meet so many judges that are like some of the most brilliant people you'll ever meet. Most of my judges from state sciences are like PhDs and like experts in their field. And just talking to them, you get to learn so much about your field and to learn a lot about your invention as well. And then, of course, the people you meet. I think some of my best friends I have met at science fairs, because we all think alike, we're all curious, we all want to make stuff happen, and we're all hyper competitive. And so that is a great way to make a lot of friends as well. And then lastly, just a few more. By the way, this is not an exhaustive list. If I give an exhaustive list, it'll be pages and pages long of competitions. The last two is the Congressional App Challenge. If you invented like an app or something, every single district in the United States, their congressperson hosts a Congressional App Challenge every single year, where you get to submit to your local representative. And then if you win, I'm pretty sure you get to go to Washington, D.C., which is pretty cool. And then the last one is the 3M Young Scientist. This is also for middle schoolers. It's another like science fair type of competition. Super, super fun and super, super cool. Some other extracurriculars that might not be competitive as well include just going to makerspaces. I'm pretty sure almost every city in the United States has like an open use makerspace. Maybe you have to pay a small fee. And what's great about these makerspaces is that they have all of the tools you'll ever need to invent. They'll have, woodworking things, they'll have laser cutters, they have plenty of 3D printers, all the power tools, screwdrivers, wrenches that you'll need. And then when I was inventing my own thing, I had to create my own pair of virtual reality glasses / augmented reality glasses from scratch, because I was prototyping. And I went to a maker space and I got access to the tools, which was super, super useful. I would not have been able to do without it. So go attend maker spaces. Even if you're not, inventing, going to maker spaces to just learn stuff is super, super cool. Oftentimes maker spaces will host lessons. So attend those as well. Another thing is hackathons. I'm a big computer science person. I think, with how popular computer science is now, knowing the program is just such a valuable skill. And so if you go to hackathons, you'll meet some of the craziest programmers ever. You'll learn so much about programming, and that will also contribute to your invention journey as well. And the last one is, just STEM workshops. A lot of universities, you'd be surprised, host a lot of free STEM workshops. The closest university to me is the University of South Florida, USF, and they're always hosting STEM workshops that are free to the community. And every month or so, they have a new a new thing that you're making, whether it's like an underwater car or like a mini drone. Through these things, they might not be directly tied to your invention, but you're learning so many skills that you will never know when you'll be able to bring it up. I know that I went to a STEM workshop at USF, and they were teaching these things about electrical circuits. And I thought, well, when am I ever gonna have to make an electrical circuit? But lo and behold, when I was making my augmented reality glasses, I had to make my own circuit board and everything. And without that, I would never been able to make it. So even if you think it's not useful to you, you should definitely do it because you'll never know. The last group activities I want to talk about is robotics. I think Tom mentioned this as well. Robotics is my personal favorite activity, especially the first robotics competition, FRC. This one is only open to high schoolers, but what it is that every single year there's a new robotics game. On the right-hand side, you'll see a GIF. This was from a few years ago where we had to like shoot balls into like a net like basketball. Every single year they have a new game, and every single year people make like huge robots. I'm talking these robots can be like 6 feet tall. But the best part about this is that FRC, you're building the robot completely from scratch. Every single piece of metal, you're cutting yourself, you're wiring the robot up together, you're programming stuff, you're programming AI a lot of times, everything you're doing from scratch. And most of my mechanical engineering skills and most of my STEM skills came from robotics because when you're on a robotics team, you're touching every single part of the robot, whether it's electrical, software, or mechanical. I'm actually the captain and founder of my own robotics team. On the left-hand side, that's our robot from this year, 9627. And that's our team number, and we had a great time. Most of our members came from a background of no engineer experience or computer science experience, and by the end of it, they knew how to work a lot of the power tools, knew how to make circuit boards and everything. And so I highly encourage you to join a robotics team, especially if you're in high school, join FRC. Now, if you're not in high school, if you're watching this, you're not in high school, some other good alternatives include the first LEGO League, and I did this back in middle school. The first LEGO League, you just use Legos to complete similar challenges to FRC. But the great thing about first LEGO League is that they actually have a research component. And so every single year, there is a new challenge. The year I did it, it was like cargo and shipping. And so what my team did was that we invented a new type of box that was like much sturdier than a traditional box, and we got to present it, and we ended up winning our state championship with this invention. And so they have such a huge invention component in the first LEGO League. So if you're in middle school, I highly recommend it. First of all, Legos are super, super cool. And secondly, you get to basically do a whole invention process. So FLL is a great activity. And the other one is FTC, the first tech challenge. This is like in between first LEGO League and in between FRC. It's kind of like the medium. Once again, you're building robots. They're not as big as FRC robots, but if you want to make like a stepping stone to FRC, FTC is great. It's the same as other formats, except this one, the robots are like medium sized and you're just trying to complete a task every single year as well. But robotics, very near and dear to my heart. I highly encourage you to join robotics because even if you think you're not interested in some of the things, there will always be a spot for you. We have members on the team that are just handle marketing and fundraising. But these skills are important to inventing as well, because if you want to sell your product, you need to know how to market. And so robotics touches on every single part of being a seller, being able to pitch your product and being able to invent. So very, very valuable activity. Now, I wanted to quickly talk about the invention process from kind of like a student perspective. I kind of break it down into this little chart I have here. We start with the problem, then we go to ideation, prototyping, testing, refine, and then the pitch. Now, I'm only going to talk about a few of these, the most important ones. The first one being the problem. When you're looking for a problem, you must observe everyday life. Look at the experiences around you. For me, since I'm colorblind, that's how I came up with my project with colorblind. Since a friend had a brain tumor surgery, that's how I got that idea. But look at the problems that are in your community. Ask questions like who is affected, why does this happen? The more questions you ask, the better you'll be able to come up with a problem. And then you want to define your problem, but you have to be specific. I think a lot of times when we think of inventing, we think of, or creating something new, we think of these big, all-encompassing ideas, like cure all of cancer. But I mean, that's probably unrealistic. We have millions of scientists working on this all at once. But what those scientists are working on is a very specific type of cancer. So that's what you have to think about, is that you have to be specific. And so for me, I created for my brain tumor project was that I helped combat a very specific type of complication when it came to brain surgeries. And so I focused all of my energy into that one problem to be sure that I could fix it all. And also when you're competing at science fairs, the most specific projects are always the most successful, because the judges see that you are making a tangible impact in a specific area instead of just like a huge broad thing. So be specific. That's a huge tip that I can give you. And then when you're brainstorming, like Tom said, have a notebook and brainstorm free. Literally just do a brain dump. Always brain dump, brain dump. Even if you think in the back of your mind this is a dumb idea, it is never a dumb idea, because you never know when you're going to use it. So always brain dump, brain dump. And then in the end, after you do all that, you can narrow it down to a specific problem or specific idea that you want to pursue. Um, okay, my image isn't loading here. I don't think the image is loading. That's okay. There's supposed to be an image there of like a wheel. But ideating is another critical part. Is that you want to understand the root cause of what you're solving before you jump into ideating like a solution, right? And like Tom said, he went through many, many different prototypes. For my own invention, I went through many, many different prototypes. And so if I go back to this slide here, you'll see that I have arrows between prototyping, testing, refining. This is where you'll spend most of your time. I think I spent like many, many months just stuck in the prototyping, testing, refine phase of inventing. But don't think of it as being stuck because even if you have a setback in this area, you're still moving forward because of the amount of stuff that you're learning. And so a lot of times, you might get a bit bogged down in this area because you're like, wow, some days you really think you made like no progress or you made like negative progress, but you can't have that mentality because every single day you're working on your project is a step forward, no matter how big or how small. Now, when you're ideating, though, you also have to research existing solutions, right? Like the literature review component of doing research, you have to know what already exists. It wouldn't be very good if you invented something that already existed because then you probably wouldn't be able to file a patent for it and it wouldn't be super, super useful. Now, if you're improving on something that already exists, that's a different thing. But you always want to research existing solutions. And as a quick tip, when you're presenting at science fairs, talk about the existing solution, talk about how you're better than those existing solutions. That's always plus points. And then sketch and prototype. Once again, messy, that's okay, right? Invention in inventing is not a clean process. If it was a linear line, then everyone could be an inventor. But no, it's all over the place. There's ups and downs. And so even if you think it's messy, that's okay. And then you constantly want to be testing and getting feedback for your results. The more people you talk to, the more people you're testing your invention on, the better it is because every single step is refining, refining, refining. And then lastly, iterate, iterate, iterate. And I should have put a bullet point on here is that this is where the majority of your trial and error will be. You will make so many mistakes here. So many things that you think are great ideas will fail. You have to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Now, I have no idea why my images aren't loading. That's okay. The pitch, I want to talk about the pitch because as a person that likes competing at science fairs and STEM fairs, the pitch is like a super, super important part of it, right? That's when you're talking to your judges. And so when you're pitching when you're pitching your invention or your science or project, you want to tell a story. What I mean, though, is the story of your entire project, how you got the idea, why it's significant, the research that you did, the mistakes that you made, the ultimate solution you came up with, and then your results. All of this is like a linear story. And you also want to show, not tell, because you'll have a research board with you. You can see on your board, on your screen, that was actually my research poster from over the summer. Over the summer, I was researching at UF, but this is just an example of one of the research posters. You see that on my research poster, there's actually not a lot of text on there. A majority of it is images and results. And so that's how you want to construct your poster board as well, because when you're pitching, you want to be pointing at images. These judges that are at the RTX Invention Convention or science fairs, they're going through like many, many projects, sometimes upwards of like 70 or 80 projects. And so if you want to be memorable, show them images so that they can stick it in their minds as well and be engaged throughout the entirety of your pitch. And then in your pitch, talk about your mistakes, challenges, and failures. Talk about the trial and error process. Sometimes people go, well, I wouldn't want to admit that I made a mistake, and then because that kind of looks bad. That's the complete opposite. Usually there's a category on the rubric that specifically is about talking about your mistakes. And then when you're pitching, keep it simple. Right? Don't throw out all these random jargon words that these judges won't understand. They have a limited amount of time at each pitch. So keep your presentation simple. And then lastly, this is probably specific to the Invention Convention, but you have to know your market. Know, how much money your industry is worth. Know how much you might want to sell your product for, and then know what your competitors are as well. The Invention Convention has like a whole section of the rubric about the pitch that is literally talking about the market. So know your market, but the pitch is super, super important to me just because I'm always competing at these science fairs. And then lastly, I want to talk a bit about the Invention Convention. I know that's many of you are here for that. And so on the right-hand side, on the image of all those vintage cars, the Invention Convention is held at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. One of the coolest museums you will ever go to. You are literally setting up your poster board next to like the presidential limousines stretching back to like Theodore Roosevelt. So you get to see all those super, super old cars. You get to see Ford Model Ts. You get to see some super futuristic cars that Ford like never got to release. And there was also like a train that was like so big. And so it's a super, super cool museum to be at. And in the middle, that was me presenting. They had these camera people walking around. And so they were in that photo in the middle, they were just recording my project. But what's really cool about the Invention Convention is that sometimes at science fairs, judges just move from like one project to another project. right next to each other. But at the invention convention, you are presenting in front of a group of your peers as well as your judges, which is a really, really cool experience. And on top of that, a tip here I'll give is that when you're presenting to your judges, you have to keep everything under 5 minutes. That's literally like a rule that they have. So you have to go through your entire research process, your results, why your results matter, and talk about your market in less than 5 minutes. So keep that in mind. And lastly, that was me on stage after winning my awards. That was first place, and I also won the RTX award for special connectivity. Um, Another very cool experience from the Invention Convention was that I actually got to be cast on Shark Tank. So I'm sure most of you guys know what Shark Tank is. Is that great show on ABC? What's cool is that they actually have producers there, and you get to talk to producers about your project, and they might end up choosing you for the TV show. Now, I ultimately didn't end up chosen for the TV show, but I do know of someone that did get chosen, and they actually ended up appearing on the show and securing an investment from one of the sharks. And so this opportunity is open to everyone. So definitely try it. Don't be afraid. It's really, really chill. You just talk like a person briefly, like 2 minutes about your project. And if you're interested, you never know. You might end up in front of Mark Cuban or Kevin O'Leary, some of the famous sharks that are on Shark Tank. And then lastly, that image of me is just me getting interviewed after winning first place. They do a lot of interviews at the Arctics Invention Convention. So if you like public speaking and you like talking, that's definitely a great thing. Lastly, I think Ms. Carter mentioned this at the beginning. I also run a group, a nonprofit called the Academia Research Collective, and I teach research and I teach the invention process. We have a YouTube channel called youtube.com/@RealArc. We also have an Instagram at the Academia Research Collective. I'm always releasing videos, little tidbits about research. I have a whole series that breaks down the entire research process. It's like 10 videos long. And just yesterday, I uploaded a video on a part of the invention process and how to write a research paper. And so if you're interested in learning more about research and academia in general and about the invention process, check out the Academia Research Collective. That's just like a little plug from me. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you learned something. And if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Darren, and thank you again to Tom for your great presentations. It's, from the teacher's perspective and the student perspective, it's just so inspiring, what we can do at any age level and at any grade level, right? So we have a good number of questions in our Q&A, so I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. All right, so let's see. First question. Darren, you mentioned a network of invention clubs that can support each other. Do you recall the name of it or how someone might be able to get in contact with something like that?
Yes, I'm trying to think of the exact name. There was this large nonprofit organization that kind of like oversaw a lot of research clubs. If I find it, maybe I'll send an email out afterwards. I don't exactly remember the name off the top of my head, but what I can talk about is that for my research club at my school, we actually got connected with our local invention convention league, and we were able to expand our club like that. And so, with a research club, leverage the fact that you are a club and try to get these connections with these local organizations because a lot of times they want to encourage more students to get into research. So that's a huge tip.
And again, y'all, if you don't have a club at your school, you're always able to be the first one to start the club, right?
And like I said, starting a club, as a person that's applying to colleges, looks good.
And
All
I
right.
will say too, when it comes with like clubs, there are a lot of community centers and stuff that host clubs as well. Like for example, I know that our regional like Boys and Girls Club that they have where, because you may not have the same number of people, like a large number of people at your school. So definitely can look regionally to groups and clubs as well.
Absolutely. Expand out if you need to stretch your net out, your social net. All right, let's see. Next one. This one can go for anybody. How do you know if your idea is too niche for a science fair or if it's okay? Do you think the size of the audience or as long as it's well constructed, it's okay to try for ISEF or another competition? So how do we determine what idea is the one to go with?
I have never seen a project that is too niche. One of the top grand prize winners from ISEP a few years ago had an insanely specific project. It was like measuring a specific type of bacteria with a specific type of shrimp cell with a specific process in a specific method. I think that's as specific as it gets. The more niche it is better because first of all, you're probably solving something that barely anyone's ever talked about before, and you can just say you can just be like, look, no one's really ever done this before. I'm niche in this category. It might be a small thing, but I'm helping to create and produce new knowledge, and that's great. So I really don't think that if there's ever something that's too niche, too broad, definitely. Sometimes I've seen like too broad projects that like bite off more than they can chew. But I would never discourage someone by saying that your project is too niche. I've never seen that.
Building on that, another ICEF question. So, after having competed at ICEF and other science fairs, what tips do you have that you wish you knew from the beginning?
I think the biggest tip is being able to learn how to simplify your project down. A lot of people, when they're presenting their research at these competitions, think that it's great to throw around these buzzwords, just so your judges will be like, wow, you know what that means. But a lot of the times, that's not the case. The ability to, for lack of a better word, dumb things down and make it super simple is a very, very valuable skill, not just in science fairs, but in like just general life as well. Because you remember, yes, these judges are PhDs and they're professors and they're industry experts, but they're reviewing like 70 projects at a time. Their mind doesn't have the capacity to constantly be at full RPM thinking about your project. And so the ability to be able to shrink your project down to its bare core components and be able to present it in a very simple, effective, and engaging way is the biggest tip. When I started out, I tried to throw in all these buzzwords. Not a good idea. Tom?
I want to second Darren's thing about being able to like dumb it down or communicate effectively to the masses. That's soft skills, like and working with like career connected learning. A big thing that we are trying to push because this is coming from industry, and this is like all types of industry, whether it be at a welding shop or whether it be as a physician, is the ability to take complex matter and be able to communicate effectively and plainly to people so they understand. And I'm not saying that you have to talk to them like they're idiots. That's not the point. But something that does resonate with judges is when you can clearly communicate within context, a broader context, like very specific things, because that is a very rare skill that's going to serve you well throughout your entire life. Just the ability to be able to walk into a room, know who you're talking to, and be able to communicate effectively.
And just to build on that, so we talk about like this elevator pitch that, for some of us, 5 minutes sounds like it's a really, really long time, but in actuality, it's so quick. So what would you all say is kind of the key points that somebody should focus on when they're making their pitch?
Um, yeah, I go ahead first just because the invention convention is the 5 minutes thing. Always start with your problem. Always start with the problem. Talk about the problem briefly, and then talk about current solutions that exist. Talk about the process that you made to kind of create your new invention. This should be the longest part of it, right? What you did, the methodology that you went through, and then you throw in your mistakes there as well. This will be the longest part of it. Round out with your results. You don't have to actually spend that much time on your results. So I have like many graphs on my science and research posters. I usually just talk about the two most important ones or three most important ones, and then I like to end it by talking about what I'm going to do in the future because that's always a category on the science fair rubrics. And then for the invention convention, I also end by talking about my market. This industry is a $17 billion industry and like all that, blah, 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 blah. This is only specific to invention convention though. If you're at like a science fair, like a regular science fair, just spend your time talking about your conclusion and your future implications. There's not really a need to talk about the market.
Thanks so much. I want to kind of pivot for a second and go back to our patent information. So Tom, I know you answered this by text
Sure.
earlier, but can you kind of go through like the process of obtaining a patent and like that timeline?
Right. So from the time you actually go through and you start your patent search, which I put a link to the USPTO patent search in there, from the time you go through that, from the time you actually apply, don't be surprised if it takes up to like 3 years. Most finish around a couple, and it all depends on how many claims you have. So remember, claims when you go through are things that makes your invention novel. And a good thing about claims is the more claims that you have, the more likely you are to have some of those passed so you can actually be awarded your patent. The bad things is the more claims that you have, like some of them you really if you just don't want to put tons of claims in there because what that's going to do is each of those claims has to be researched and compared against other patents that are existing. So what that does is that extends the time that a patent examiner will go through your patent, and also probably increase the chances that you're going to get pushbacks against your unique claims. So when you go into it, just kind of prepare yourself that this is not going to be a quick and timely process. The process is going to take a couple years, and as Darren can probably attest to, sometimes though the wait is just really annoying, and you want that instant gratification because you know that you have something good and you're ready to share it out. But you just have to wait because the process is quite lengthy. And that's why another question on there was kind of like professional representation. I have seen teachers that with their students have self-applied, and I have seen some that have actually been awarded a patent through that because you can draw your own art, you can make your own claims. And I don't know what Darren did, but my advice is even if you don't have funds, search for pro bono attorneys, whether it be through the USPTO or Microsoft or even your local law offices, because a lot of attorneys do have as part of their licensure renewal hours that they need to have pro bono. So it's just kind of keep that in mind, and they know how to word things, they know how to structure things, and that's going to save you a tremendous amount of time in the application process.
And speaking of free and pro bono lawyers, if you compete at the Invention Convention and if you make it to nationals, they are one of the biggest special awards. And I think one of the highlights of the Invention Convention is that they work and partner with law firms to give you patents. And everyone that's basically won a pro bono patent lawyer from the Invention Convention has gone on to patent their invention, even if they're like third graders or like second graders. So it's very, very possible.
That's awesome. So, just hearing about that pro bono work is incredible because, a lot of, students or inventors in general feel that, money is the barrier to their success, whether or not they have the capital to actually get started on life-changing work. So the fact that there are options out there is incredible. Let's see. This one I believe is directed towards Darren. So how do you balance academics, extracurriculars, social life in high school, and then I'll add in also college applications?
Um, Honestly, it's just you have to get very good at like just organizing your time properly. I think, but a lot of people that I know are always like, oh, you have to work on stuff all the time, all the time, all the time, and that's how you get burnt out. And then in the long run, it's not good. And so, in a day, I structure it where so I do a lot of activities, right? So I'm doing research. I have research at UF as well that I'm a part of, and then I work for a robotics team, and then I have the academia research collective, and it's just about apportioning the appropriate amount of time for each of these activities, in addition to completing your homework, and then also knowing when it's time to hang out with your family or hang out with your friends. The biggest pitfall that you can fall into that will really destroy like yourself is to push your family and your friends away thinking that you need to always have this like grind mindset. I think that's really common nowadays, especially with high schools. It's like you have to grind every single minute of the day 24/7, and that's super unhealthy, and in the long run you will pay the price. So know when you need to take a break.
And also say is having those interactions with a broader community and just kind of letting your guard down and kind of like stepping away from the work. That's when you have a lot of those eureka moments where you're just kind of like out in the middle of nowhere doing something, then it just pops in your head. Then you hope you have your notebook nearby so you can jot it down as you remember it.
And for those writing college essays, it's the exact same with coming up with a college essay topic. If you try to force yourself to come up with one, you will never come up with one. But maybe one day while you're like washing the dishes, you'll come up with one. That's always what happens.
Absolutely. So getting out of that echo chamber and just broadening your horizons really does it for you. I also wanted to add in a question just because we talked a lot about this in our presentation. So we talk about how maintaining curiosity is key in invention, innovation, and just developing as you go forward. So what is something that you can do to maintain your curiosity and even like your love of learning as you're going through?
I think as somebody that's lived my entire life as just a naturally curious person, is that you never know where the next path is going to lead. And I've been all over the place and I've been able to do some amazing things despite being first generation and despite not having the highest ACT, SAT scores, right? So, like, it's just kind of a curiosity, willingness to work, and again, get back to some of the soft skills about being able to communicate and just wanting to geek out with people that also love to geek out. Because as Darren pointed out, not everybody, if you're on a robotics team, You don't want everybody to be like you because then you're just going to be in the echo chamber. But if you get people with a lot of diverse thoughts and a lot of strengths, then they really help mask some of your strengths. And then you guys can collectively work together just to keep things fresh. And as a human, I think, a goal, and kind of Darren was talking about this, you just can't get stuck with your nose to the grindstone and work all the time. That's not the key to success. That's the key to like burning yourself out. You need to be able to step away, and even if you're working or you're engaging curiosity, do it in different ways. And that way you always be fresh and you're open to new possibilities because, you know, it may be A, B, and C, but you don't necessarily have to go from A through B to get to C to be like it's interesting sometimes just to hop around and make those connections outside of that linear way of thought.
And speaking of connections, it's through connections and learning about people where you'll find the problems that you might end up leading to a research project or an invention. And something that I do to stay curious personally is that I collect a lot of like calligraphy pens. So I'm a big journaler. And what I do is that every day I write down three questions I have every day, three questions, and then one thing I learned every single day. I have a journal just full of like this random stuff. That's one way to stay curious. That's how I stay curious. But talking to people is the number one thing. Being social, because that's how you learn in the end. Humans are social creatures.
I love that. And I also can't emphasize enough, we all have technology on our side when it comes to connection, and we have so many tools where we can just bounce ideas off each other. But I also want to emphasize that in-person, real human connection is something that cannot be replaced. It is essential to us all. And it's awesome if we can get a community together within, our schools, our regions where we're living, because then we impact our community in a positive way, right? So love that. I think we'll go into the last couple questions are kind of similar where uh Darren, there was a request if you could put up that last slide again with your YouTube information. I think we have some potential subscribers that would like to get on there.
I can just message in the chat. How about that?
Okay, perfect. So if you're interested in getting connected with the YouTube there, and then we had some other questions about contact, I'll defer to you all. I do know that, once we have any extra questions that come in later, I'll email them forward to our panelists, and then they can get us back with their answers. So,
And I'll
and then
also say, I believe that Darren mentioned LinkedIn. So we're both on LinkedIn too. So if you're interested in following, that would be another way to do that and see what we're up to or reach out to us.
also, yeah, that's another good thing to mention too, especially for some of you upper high schoolers, 11th and 12th graders. LinkedIn is an incredible tool, even though if you're not in a job per se, you can still outline your extracurriculars and, mentorships and connections that you've had for in the professional academic space. It's a great tool. I connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn, so highly recommend adding that to your toolbox.
And don't forget to document your achievements. And like, you may be thinking that your achievements aren't worthy right now, but like over time, there's some really cool stuff that you're doing that you're going to forget. So document, and keep track of everything because that will serve you well later in life.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all. I'm going to go and pull up my slides now. We're going to move into the closing of our session. Thank you both again. This was a fantastic presentation. So much useful information. Thank you to our many sponsors. Without them, this would not be cost-free programming. So with our sponsors' help, we are able to provide these monthly, bi-monthly webinars to you all free of cost, free of charge. I'd like to especially thank the Claude Moore Charitable Foundation for providing their support to our program. And then I encourage you to please, please, please complete the post-webinar survey using the QR code. By completing that survey, it's one way that I log your attendance, especially if you are an asynchronous viewer on YouTube. So I can count your attendance and say, yes, you are here and yes, you participated. Completing the post-webinar survey is something that I use as a metric to determine whether or not you might be open to additional opportunities like the STEM Lyceums mentorship program, where we match students with alums of the RSI and USABO programs. So very important if you are interested in extracurriculars in that fashion to complete the post-webinar survey. I also encourage you to, if you have not done so yet, register for our next STEM Lyceums October 16th on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday at 6 p.m. We are doing STEM and gaming. We are going to be joined by Gordon Bellamy, an iconic, trailblazer of the gaming industry. He was a developer of Madden NFL football games, Madden 95. And we'll also be joined by Opera GX's founder. Opera GX is the gaming platform for Opera, the browser. So please register to our next event. We'd love to see you there. We're going to learn a lot about, gaming programs, coding, all of that fun stuff when it comes to STEM. So thank you, everybody.